Well, it's been a crazy week, hasn't it? Canadian politics is popping off. You don't know what the Liberals are doing half the time. And then as well as Donald Trump down south of the borders popping off with those executive orders, signing them, even though signing to unleash the documents of the assassination of JFK, assassination of the Martin Luther King Jr. And after he signed those documents, he took that pen and said, give that to RFK. What a gangster. And so with these executive orders, it poses the question, how does this impact us in Canada? What can we take from what they are doing down there, and can it apply up here? And what does that conversation look like? To discuss that with us here, we have Reg. And Reg, I give my heart to you. How you doing, sir?
It's funny because you wrote that in a couple different chats. I was like, what the heck is he like quoting here? Because I only caught clips of the Elon message there. And we're not going to get into his wave because like he's an awkward man to begin with. And but what is funny about that, I am getting into it a little bit here. Just for a moment, bear with me. The amount of images and video clips of people doing the same thing. Yeah, they had Taylor Swift on there. I think they had one of Obama. And like, I don't know if some of these are like doctored, ChatGPT'd or whatever, but it was just kind of funny to see how many there were. But what a wild week, honestly.
It's crazy.
It's been a wild ride.
I can't believe it all happened in 1 week. Is more so my, like, it feels like it's been broken up in a couple of weeks. And it's like, no, this all happened this week. And it's been a lot to take in.
Yeah, it's been the longest, shortest week that we've seen in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And it happened yesterday with Donald Trump going to the world, well, didn't go, virtually joining the World Economic Forum. And that was just an interesting scenario I found, was Klaus Schwab getting up there on stage, talking up Donald Trump and his revolutionary, record-breaking mandate that he got from the United States of America. He introduces Donald Trump. Trump gets up there. He's like, thanks, Klaus. And just big dogs him and then moves on. And it was just kind of hilarious to watch him just speak to that group of people and totally crap on everything they believe in. It was amazing to watch.
Well, it kind of really plays it back to the fact that he is a man of the people, even though he is a billionaire or millionaire, whatever, how much money he's got. And he does not live like the average person by any means and does not play by the same rules. He still is trying to embody that a little bit of, the people have said this organization is corrupt, full of greedy billionaires that are just trying to pull the strings on the world. I'm not here for that. I loved that. I thought that was fantastic. Whether it's all a political move, who knows? Mm-hmm. Felt good in the moment.
Yeah. Well, especially when that whole group is pushing the Green New Deal and all these different green policies. And he says, yeah, we're getting rid of that. And we're going down the whole energy dominance, oil, drill, baby, drill. Give us that natural gas. And he just said it right to their face and he said, get over it.
Yeah. The only crap I have with that is like, so he said oil, natural gas, and coal was in that. I was like, no.
Not the coal. Not the coal.
No. Coal is not good. So, and also too, I think this is where Danielle Smith's point comes into, where if we can just eliminate that coal stream and just keep pumping the natural gas to America via our pipelines, via our refining processes, like it's going to help them stay greener than if they dig up the coal. And then also it's going to enrich our population with the royalties from that oil production. It's going to put tax dollars back in there, create jobs. I'm like, there are ways to do green in ways that doesn't leave us all broke and going, I can't afford groceries at the end of the month. Totally. And everybody knows this. And anyway.
Absolutely.
We'll get into the orders.
And as we said, there were a lot of executive orders, many of them, lots of them. I think we're in the hundreds at this point that he signed off on. But there's a few that really stood out to us. And how could this impact us here in Canada? What we're seeing down there? Can we import that up here? And what were some of the ones that were highlighted to you?
Yeah, so I think it was 226 was the last count that I saw for executive orders. And as we speak, they're adding more. But the big things that I saw were kind of under these buckets of, America First actions, ending the weaponization of the federal government, and then restoration of free speech. And so some of these pieces about, the harmful executive orders of the past, this is where we're seeing like things around immigration and allowing illegal asylum seekers into the country and just basically allowing them to stay there. And we saw that actually even with the ICE raids, where they knew exactly where those people were and went after them.
Yeah.
And because it's a Feel Good Friday, we have something to make you feel good.
Absolutely. This was great. This was, Fox was following a lot of these ICE raids, and this is what they ended up finding in Boston yesterday.
One of those threats is this illegal alien from Haiti. ICE says he's a gang member with 17 criminal convictions in recent years.
Trump, you feel me? Yo, Biden forever, bro. Thank Obama for everything that he did for me, bro.
ICE Boston
Not the
quickly
music.
takes down its next targets, including this illegal alien from Brazil who has an Interpol red notice for armed robbery. This Salvadoran illegal alien charged locally with rape and released by a sanctuary jurisdiction. And this Dominican illegal alien charged with assault with a deadly weapon and heroin trafficking. Officers also arrested this Guatemalan MS-13 gang member facing gun charges. ICE says he was released from local custody just the day before. Their detainer request was ignored because of sanctuary policies.
Crazy.
A sign of shifting priorities with the new Trump administration. This man, who was in the same apartment as the target, was also arrested after ICE determined he's also in the U.S. illegally.
So this is the thing here, right? It's like nobody's against immigration.
No.
People are against basically gang members coming in and destabilizing the country. Then that's how Canadians are feeling. So when we see some of these executive orders, particularly around immigration, particularly around sanctuary status and asylum seekers and all that, it's because we're looking at this going, we are so unsafe right now because we've imported not the best of the world. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly the opposite. There was a report that came out in early December that was kind of looking at immigration patterns in Canada. And they were looking at the fact that, when we see some of these high-performing immigrants that are bringing really excellent expertise, excellent experience, and really enriching our country, they're leaving within 2 to 5 years. They're not staying. And who is staying is these people who don't have high skills, who could be easily replaced by Canadian workers, and who may or may not have warrants out for their arrest in their home countries and are bringing a lot of these problems into the neighborhoods of Canadians. And so when you see this kind of happening south of the border, where they're going, yeah, here's this person who's had a rape charge and conviction. Here's this person who has 17 different convictions against them. And we hear this all the time from the police in Canada, this stupid catch and release policy that we're seeing, where police will do the work of catching the guy, bring them in, and the judicial system, because they've been neutered by the government, just lets them back out in the street again. And they go and commit more crimes because they know they can. Like, this kind of policy is what we need in Canada so that we can actually restore safety, restore proper immigration processes, and actually bring down racism. Mm-hmm. Because what happens is that if you terrorize a community enough by a certain group of people who are acting in bad faith, what happens is that community then takes that label and applies it to everybody who looks like them. And that's how you breed racism. And no amount of DEI classes is going to erase that if you are the victim of some kind of crime, whether that be, physical abuse, sexual abuse, even deception and stealing of a car or money or whatever. You know what I mean? So this is actually reducing racism by removing those people who should never have been in the country in the first place and welcoming into Canadian society the people that should be here, who want to be a part of our society and enrich the culture and the fabric of Canada. So when I see some of these executive orders come in and you see on the left, they're just like, these are racist policies, white supremacy is alive again. I'm like, no, actually, this is how we bring down racism, is by keeping the people who are good enrichers of the community and integrating them well into a community and into society and pushing those people who should not be here back out.
Yeah. And I think the one thing I do have a question about, because we saw this south of the border and it's happening here at the Liberal Party, is when you pitch this idea of, yes, let's remove the people who have come from other countries who are committing crimes, catch and release, causing issues within the community. Yeah, we should probably send them back. But then it gets shifted to, oh, snap. So you want to just deport all immigrants. Yeah. Like that's the rhetoric that's been happening. We saw it down south, right? And we're seeing it here too. And so when you're a normal person trying to have that conversation with somebody, like how do you have that conversation in a respectful manner, but also inform them of like, that's not what I want. Can we make a very clear distinction here?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's what I just said about racism. It's like, how do you breed racism? You take a couple bad actors who look like a certain demographic, throw them in there and terrorize a group of people with that. And then everybody has the mindset that this is what all people are like. Whether you are like the best person or not, that's what's going to happen. And so by removing those back actors and leaving the people who, like I said, who enrich the community alone and in place, and you have that contact exposure, you see them at the grocery store, you interact with them at your job, you go to the same community events as them, it brings down the racism because you know that person. They share the same values as you. And that's where I think that immigration should be values-based. It shouldn't be based off of whether or not they're wanted in their own country, because some of these folks that we've let in, and we know that have been let in from India in particular, because the Indian government's labeled them as terrorists, they actually are. And we had Jagmeet Singh sitting down with a group of them. And it's like, these people are wanted for murdering Hindus, and these people are wanted for, setting fire to their places of worship. Like, is that who we really want to exemplify as the best of the world in Canada? Hell no. So, but back to the orders though. So these are the kind of things that I'm looking at. Like, they have the Remain in Mexico programs, the limiting asylum seekers. Do some of these people actually need asylum is the other part of it. Like, let's do a little bit of thought around this. Is everybody who claims that they're being persecuted actually being persecuted? And can we reserve that for the people who actually are? Because that's the other part of it too, is that if you are actually being persecuted in your home country for a reason that is not legitimate, we do need to protect those people.
Yeah.
But they get diluted by all the like mass amount of people who don't actually fit that.
And there's a point too that was brought up is if you're traveling and walking through 6 different countries before you get to the States, why can't you take asylum in one of those countries first?
Exactly.
Like what's happening here? And that's the question a lot of people are asking. If you're coming from Mexico and you're like living in northern central Mexico trying to escape the cartels, very different situation. And yes, we should take that as a serious asylum claim. But if you're coming up from South America, walking through 5, 6, 7, 8 different countries, I'm sure one of them would be able to protect you if you are being persecuted in your home country.
Exactly. The other thing that I'd like to is like the ending of the weaponization of the federal government. I thought that was an amazing grouping of policies. Things like launching investigations into possible allegations of political bias or misuse of federal power. Like that kind of introspection and looking inward and saying, what are we doing wrong? What could we be doing better? Have we misused power? That's incredible. Like, I think that's like something that's uncommon in the United States. And we kind of in Canada have always kind of been like, oh no, we're the introspective ones. We're always, making sure that we're doing the right thing. No, we're not. Here's some introspection for you. No, we're not. And so I think that we need that kind of a policy. You see things like the Doge that they're looking at, like, how are we spending our money? To be quite candid, I've spent 3 hours so far, and we'll have to spend another 3 going through our public accounts data just because it's so dense. And honestly, we are not spending funds appropriately. People are spending the money like it doesn't matter to them and they don't care. And then I also have to think about the way that we're using our different measures, like the Emergency Measures Act. Like, we're using our laws against our people. This kind of investigation into yourself and into the way that the government operates, we need that badly in all aspects, in how we're using the different measures that we have and the different legislation we have. How are we using the money that we're collecting, and are we doing that in the best interest of the taxpayer? Like, where did the money go for X, Y, Z? Just input scandal there. You know what I mean? So these are the kind of things. And then actually pursuing legal actions for things that have been found to be misaligned with the values of what they were intended for. So if we looked at this and said, SNC-Lavalin should not have had this, and Jody Wilson-Raybould was smeared for no reason, maybe there should be some reparations to Jody Wilson-Raybould for the harm caused to her. Maybe there should be some kind of federal charge towards the people who allowed the SNC-Lavalin case to go forward. And maybe there should be something against SNC-Lavalin itself. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to all come out of the taxpayer dollar. Like, that's a company. Mm-hmm. Pull it from them. Yeah. So this is where I see these different things. they're establishing a whistleblower protection program for federal employees, like incredible. And then the last thing out of the big 3 buckets, because there's other little pieces here and there, is just the restoration of freedom of speech and ending federal censorship. So they put in laws, or not laws, sorry. They put in executive orders around the idea of companies like Meta, companies like Twitter, or I guess X now, that they don't actually have to censor the data that they are putting forward, and that actually it's against the public interest for them to be censoring the information that's being put out there to promote a certain political bias or political leaning. I think these are exactly the kind of things that we need in Canada. There's a couple more that follow, CBDC, that America's not going to pursue its own CBDC, but they are going to, support cryptocurrencies, become an AI leader in the world.
That's huge.
Like, that's incredible. That's the way to move into the future.
Yeah, and so that is then the question is, you're seeing this stuff happen down south of the border, and now we're starting to see our own process eventually here when we will eventually get to an election. There's people obviously who are supporting Poilievre, others who are starting to get on the board and the train of the Liberal Party as Carney starting to take control of that race at this point in time. Obviously, our best hope at this point, the PPCers will argue and fight, but the reality is our best shot is Poilievre. So how can we apply that same type of pressure to make sure we get these similar results out of that government at this point in time?
So the big thing with the left right now is they're trying to paint Donald Trump as Satan reincarnated, and that they're trying to paint Poilievre as basically Satan 2.0, but Canada's version, Satan Light, we'll call it. And it's foolish how they're trying to paint this all. And they're pulling up things like the DEI rebuke that the states have saw. They're returning to merit-based systems. And I've said this on the show before that, there's leading psychologists who have talked about the fact that DEI isn't working anymore for everyone. And there's some that I even argue that it's never worked. I don't know if I quite agree with that. But there's different affirmative action things that have been in place that made sense for the time period that they were in and don't make sense to continue into the future. There's a well-known podcaster, Stephen Bartlett. He does the Diary of the CEO podcast. He had a whole conversation on this for anybody who's left-leaning and wants to see that. But basically, the idea was that he's like, I'm a black man. I'm very well off. My kids are going to go to school and be fine. They don't need government money to pay for them to go. However, poor white person from the Appalachia who, doesn't have 2 cents, and because they're white, don't get the same access to bursaries and things. Like, that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, that's exactly right. We should be redefining what support looks like and not basing it off of things like, physical attributes that you have no control over because you're born that way. Yeah. But, being in cycles of poverty, that would count. So anyway, things like that I'm just seeing. And basically, we need to bring it back and say that Trump is not all evil. Some things you may not agree with, but when you start comparing Poilievre to Trump, that's actually not a bad thing in a lot of this case. And we see it in just the way that the things that he's rolling out is going to put America into a time of prosperity that we've never seen before.
Yeah, the golden age is coming, they're saying. So you won't watch all of it, but I know you haven't seen it yet. And this is Mark Carney's official campaign video where he's trying to pull on the heartstrings of Canadians, let them know it's time to build and move forward and do great things, he says.
Mark Carney launches.
Former governor of the Bank of Canada.
Mark Carney is now officially entering the race.
I was born in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, and raised in Edmonton. Both my parents were teachers. I wanted to be a hockey player. I played goalie for Laurier Heights, went to St. Francis Xavier High School, and won a scholarship to the U.S. But one core principle has guided my life's work ever since. Markets don't have values. People do. So I left finance and joined the public service to help ensure our economy supports the things that Canadians value, like healthcare, security, and a life you can afford. One of my first jobs in the public service was helping a Liberal Prime Minister fix our massive government debt. When the markets crashed in 2008, I worked with a Conservative Prime Minister to protect Canadian homes. I got it done, and Canada recovered faster than any other G7 country.
It's all him, baby.
And I got it done again, navigating the British economy through Brexit.
How is that
I
doing?
can tell you from experience, this country is not broken. But it does need experienced leadership and a real plan to ensure that all Canadians benefit in an increasingly complex and dangerous world. You can't stand up to Trump when you're working from his playbook. Pierre Poilievre has been a politician his entire life. And in all that time, he hasn't fixed a thing. He just complains, misleads, and blames everything on someone else. I'm not a politician, but I've always been a liberal, because liberals believe that people are free to make their own choices.
Talking about
And
freedom.
your government should protect your right to live the life that you want to live. But we also believe that good governments empower their citizens to build great things. We can build the strongest economy in the G7. We can build bridges between each other. We're a proud
nailing
nation of builders. And now, it's time to build.
Some would say build back better.
I have to hand it to them. Excellent campaign video. The amount of hockey that they threw in there, like the amount of like cultural icons, like well done. Like
Yep.
I just like, it's evil. It's like, it's so well done. I'm like, that's going to get everyone. Like they're going to look at that and they're like, child running with a Canadian flag. Oh my God.
Let's bring it back.
Yeah.
Even though it's not going to do anything for us, he's not going to do any things he's talking about. But that is where I'm talking about with conservatives. I'm seeing a little too much of it. Is if he wins the leadership and he's now head and shoulders above the rest, you need to take him very seriously and making sure that we put our foot on the gas pedal. We cannot allow him in anywhere near the PM seat.
Yeah. The worst part is like, he's a much better face than Poilievre.
What do you mean by that?
Well, just like, I find even just like, so Poilievre's smile, like, it's just like, it's a little off-putting. For mainstream. Yeah. And like, even for myself, like I look at Poilievre and like, I don't look at him and go, I want to have a beer with that man. Although I agree with every single one of his policies and I don't know what it is, but I can't quite put my finger on it. But I look at Mark Carney, I was like, he's warm. He seems like he's confident. Like, I don't know, maybe it's the tonality in his voice is different. Like Pierre is like very nasally. So I don't know what it is about him, but I'm like, oh, you seem trustworthy. And so there's that problem that's happening there. And what I hate about this all is like, I wish the policies were reversed because I think if you took Pierre's policies and then put them with Mark Carney's face and general persona, I mean, you'd be unstoppable. But the problem is it's the exact opposite. Like, so it's going to be an uphill battle, right? And one of the things that I talked about with some coworkers was just the fact that there's so much misinformation out there. One guy even thought that Pierre had worked for
Bloc Québécois.
Bloc Québécois at one point. It was like,
All because of his last name.
yeah, and like actually, honestly, and they were talking about how like Mark Carney has saved us in all these ways, which he blatantly puts out there. You know, that I saved us in 2008. You were the governor of the Bank of Canada. We already did a whole video on what you can and cannot do. Yeah. Like, give me a freaking break. Look at Great Britain right now since you left.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that place is doing fantastic.
Yeah, they're doing great over there, aren't they? Yeah, we want more of that. And that is like more so the question and issue. So we look back what happened in the States, right? The reason why Trump smoked Kamala is first off, Trump's policies. Everyone wanted to get on board with that, and they didn't like being gaslit by the Democrats. But as well, Kamala wasn't a great candidate. And she, as we made the joke on the show, is she was she believe it or not, was just a dumber version of Trudeau, which as I know is hard to do. But what would have happened in that election if pre-California fires, they put Gavin Newsom against Trump? That's what we're facing right now.
Yeah.
If Carney gets the leadership of the Liberals, it's going to be a dogfight. And if you're not paying attention and doing the work, we're going to get this taken out from under us before we even know it.
Yeah. And that's the crazy part, right? Is that people believe, they're like, oh, he's a new face. Most of cabinet has resigned, so we're going to get a new cabinet. Like, it's basically like having an election without all the work. And I was like, oh my God, we're going to keep these liberals in power.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's literally what I'm seeing. And so everybody who's looking at this going, oh, no worries, Pierre's got such a lead. It's like, don't be the tortoise in the hare. We all learned that, when we were kids.
Yeah.
Just because he ran fast, quick.
And we'll see, right? Because we had the ECOS poll, which you can kind of discard that for the most part. That showed the Liberals closing that gap like crazy. But I am curious, the Abacus data poll will be coming out very soon, post all this Carney information. And even them, they said, we're not seeing a bump right now for the Liberals, which is very interesting. So we'll see what the polls are saying. But if you're talking to people on the other side of the aisle, hear them out and make sure you're doing the work, because you cannot take this for granted at all. Well, that was a great show, y'all. You guys are awesome. Enjoy your Friday. We're out.